Hey, everybody. Name's Emma, and if you've got a minute, I've got a tale that's a bit of a roller coaster, one that dives into love, betrayal, and a fight for dignity. Before we dive into the deep end, let me set the stage and introduce you to the cast of this little drama of mine. It starts with me, Emma. Born into what many would call privilege, with a silver spoon and all that jazz. But despite the cushy start, I was raised to value hard work over handouts. My dad's the king of the engine additive world, a self-made man who turned a niche into an empire. Mom's no slouch either, she built a beauty salon empire from the ground up, making her name synonymous with style. Their divorce when I was 19 could have been messy, but they kept it classy, splitting everything down the middle while somehow maintaining a friendship. Dad stayed single, content with his business and bachelorhood, while Mom remarried but didn't expand the family beyond me. Enter Jake, stage right. My husband, or as I've come to think of him, the catalyst of my personal upheaval. We got hitched when I was fresh out of college, after I landed a job teaching music to kids with more energy than sense. Life seemed pretty sweet until we hit a bump, I got pregnant, and suddenly, Jake's true colors started to bleed through. One lazy Sunday, sprawled on the couch with his feet up, Jake casually lobbed the grenade into our life. Emma, babe, why don't you just quit your job? Stay at home with the baby. We'll manage. I nearly choked on my tea. Quit my job? Jake, you know we can't afford that on your salary alone. Plus, I love my work. He waved a hand dismissively, a smirk playing on his lips. Come on, Em. It's not like we're ordinary folks. Your dad's loaded. A little help from him, and we're golden. I felt my blood boil. That's not the point, Jake. I'm not tapping into my parents' wealth for our day-to-day. We agreed to live within our means. But Jake wouldn't let it go. Over dinner, in front of his parents no less, he brought it up again. Emma's considering taking some time off work, you know, with the baby coming and all. His mom, Carol, a woman with a sharp tongue and an eye for advantage, jumped in. Oh, that's wonderful. With Emma's family, you two don't have to worry about a thing. I clenched my fork a little tighter, trying to keep my cool. Actually, we haven't decided anything. And we intend to manage on our own, thank you. Jake's dad, Frank, never one to miss a beat, chimed in with a chuckle. Why play the hard way, Emma? A little help from your folks, and you could be living easy. Why waste that opportunity? The conversation spiraled from there, with Jake and his parents painting grand pictures of a life lived on my parents' dime. Every word felt like a betrayal, twisting the knife a bit deeper. They didn't see me, they saw a ticket to an easy life. That night, lying in bed next to Jake, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. Jake, do you really think we should be relying on my parents like that? I whispered, hoping for some sign I'd misread the situation. He rolled over, facing me with those eyes that once melted my heart. Emma, it's not about need. It's about what's smart. Your parents can afford it, and we deserve a break. Why not take it? Deserve. That word echoed in my head long after Jake had drifted off to sleep. It was clear we were on different paths, with different values. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd missed the signs, and where we went from here. After that first clash with Jake about money and pride, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd find our way back to the same page. But, oh, was I wrong? Enter the in-laws, stage left, with their own special brand of chaos. Jake's folks weren't exactly the poster children for self-reliance. They had this way of sniffing out a free meal from miles away, and my family's wealth was like a beacon to them. One evening, we're all sitting around our cramped living room, and Frank's going on about this new business opportunity that just needed a small investment to get off the ground. So, Emma, darling, Carol starts, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that could give you cavities. With your family's resources, I bet you could easily help us out. It's such a sure thing. I tried to keep my cool, really I did. Carol, Frank, I've told you before, we're managing our finances independently. My parents' money isn't part of this equation. But Frank, oh, he's got the persistence of a door-to-door salesman. Come on, Emma. It's not like you'd feel it. What's a few thousand to your dad? He probably spends that on golf in a weekend. The audacity floored me. Here they were, sitting in our home, eating our food, and they had the guts to treat my family's hard-earned money like it was theirs for the taking. Jake tries to play mediator. Maybe they have a point. It's just a loan, right? We could help out family. Family? I nearly choked on the word. Jake, when did we decide it's our job to bankroll your parents' dreams? The room went ice cold. Carol, not one to let a moment of drama go by unexploited, piped up. Well, I never. Here we thought family helped each other out. But if you're going to be stingy. Stingy? Now, I was seeing red. Working for what you have isn't being stingy, Carol. It's called being responsible. Maybe you should try it sometime. Frank tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. Look, Emma, no need to get upset. We're just talking here. Talking, right. I couldn't hide my sarcasm. Seems like all we ever do is talk about how my family can solve your problems. That night, after they finally left, with Jake apologizing for his parents' misunderstanding, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-on invasion of our lives by two people who saw me not as a daughter-in-law, but as a walking, talking ATM. After our little Lily came into this world, life took a turn I didn't quite expect. You'd think the arrival of a grandchild would bring out the best in people, right? Well, not so much with Jake's folks. They showed up at the hospital with what had to be the cheapest onesie from the discount bin. It still had the clearance sticker on it. But when my folks came through with a beautiful hand-knit blanket and some top-notch baby gear, you'd have thought World War III was about to break out in that hospital room. Wow, really laying it on thick, aren't they? Carol quipped, eyeing the gifts with a mix of disdain and envy. Must be nice to just throw money around. Bet they could have just gotten you a house instead of all this fluff. Jake chimed in with a chuckle. Yeah, Mom's got a point, Em. Your folks sure don't hold back. A house might have been more practical, huh? My heart sank. Here I was, holding our newborn, and all they could talk about was how my parents should have spent their money. It stung, hearing Jake echo his mom's words. Was our daughter just a dollar sign to them? I tried to keep the peace, biting back my growing anger. Well, it's not about the price tag, right? It's the thought that counts. But Frank wasn't about to let it go. Oh, sure. But when you think about it, a nice little investment in property, now, that's a gift that keeps on giving. The ride home from the hospital was tense. Jake tried to smooth things over, saying his parents were just old-fashioned and didn't mean anything by it. But the seed was planted. Doubts started creeping in about why Jake really married me. Was it love, or was my family's bank account the main attraction? A few weeks later, during one of their unsolicited visits, Carol brought it up again. We were all crammed in our living room, Lily fussing in my arms, and Carol couldn't resist a jab at the new stroller my mom had bought us. Must be nice, having your folks shower Lily with all these expensive toys and gadgets. Though, a contribution to a house fund would have been more useful, don't you think, she said, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive tone I'd come to dread. Jake, sitting beside his mom, nodded. Actually, babe, we've been talking. Maybe your parents could help us out with a down payment instead of more baby stuff. Makes sense, right? I was floored. Not only were Jake's parents relentless, but now Jake was on board with turning our daughter's birth into a bargaining chip for financial gain. It felt like I was living in some twisted reality where love and family meant less than material wealth. Is that what this is about for you, Jake? Using my parents for money? I couldn't hide the hurt in my voice. I thought we were in this together, for better or worse, not for richer or poorer. Jake looked taken aback, but Carol just sniffed. Well, when your wife's parents are rich, it's only practical to think about these things. After they finally left, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Lily asleep beside me. The realization hit me hard. My marriage, my family, it all felt like a transaction to them. And I was the currency. The last few years have been a roller coaster, to say the least. Lily's grown into a fiery little 3-year-old, full of life and laughter. But life threw us some curveballs that I never saw coming. First, it was Mom. The accident was sudden, a shock to all of us. I was drowning in grief, barely keeping it together for Lily. But Jake? His first question wasn't about how I was holding up. No, it was, so, how much are you getting from your mom's will? It felt like a slap in the face. My mom wasn't even cold, and here he was, eyeing her legacy like a vulture. According to Mom's will, I inherited the barbershop chain. I knew nothing about running a business, but Jake was quick to offer his expertise. Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a knack for business, he said, all confidence and smiles. I was too lost in my grief to argue. So, I let him take the reins, though I made sure the ownership papers stayed in my name. I thought, maybe, just maybe, he could turn things around for us. Then, barely a year later, Dad passed away from a heart attack. Losing both my parents in such a short time broke something in me. I needed Jake more than ever, but all he could talk about was what we'd inherit from Dad. The day after Dad's death, Jake's parents came over. I expected maybe a shred of decency, a moment of respect for my loss. But no, they dove straight into speculations about Dad's wealth. So, Emma, must be a hefty sum coming your way, huh? Frank said, barely able to contain his glee. I saw red. Can you not? For once, just stop talking about money. I shouted, the words exploding out of me like shrapnel. Carol put on her best offended face. Well, I never. We're just concerned about the family's future. No need to be rude. Jake tried to play peacemaker, as always. They're just curious. It's a big deal, you know? A big deal? I echoed, my voice rising. My parents are gone, Jake. And all you and your parents can think about is cashing in? Is that all I am to you? A bank? The room fell silent. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake looked at me, then at his parents, and mumbled some half-hearted apology. But the damage was done. I couldn't stand the sight of them, their greed, their complete lack of empathy. Get out, I said, my voice steady, but cold. They left, Carol muttering under her breath, Frank with a scowl. Jake lingered, trying to justify his parents' behavior. But I was done listening. 2 days after my dad died, Jake comes bouncing through the doorway earlier than usual. Babe, I've got awesome news. He beams at me, barely containing his excitement. I've struck a deal to sell the hairdresser chain. Can you believe it? My jaw nearly hit the floor. What? You did what without even asking me? I was fuming, feeling a mix of betrayal and disbelief. Before we could really dive into it, his folks showed up, ready to party like we'd hit the jackpot. They brought in this feast from some fancy restaurant and a bunch of brochures that screamed high roller. Carol was all smiles, waving those brochures in my face. Guess what, honey? We've sold the old condo and put down a deposit on a beach house. We're all moving to the coast. I stared at her, feeling like I was trapped in some bad dream. Hold on. You what? Nobody asked me about moving. I don't want to live by the beach, with all that humidity and the winds? With a kid? Are you out of your mind? Carol just waved off my concerns like I was talking about the weather. Oh, don't you worry about that. We've also booked a cruise. You should come with us. It'll be fabulous. Where's this money coming from? I asked, my patience wearing thin. Well, darling, with your father's passing and the sale of the salons, money's no object now. We're set for life. Think about it, yachts, private jets. We're living the dream. Carol's eyes were practically sparkling with dollar signs. I turned to Jake, utterly dumbfounded. Why are we even talking about selling my mom's business again? And what's this nonsense about being set for life? Babe, it makes sense. Managing both businesses will be too much. We gotta focus on what's more profitable. It's for our future, for our daughter's future. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The greed, the audacity, it was all too much. Show me the financials for the salon, I demanded. I want to see everything before we make any rash decisions. Jake squirmed, avoiding eye contact. Look, it's all about our future, about making sure we're comfortable. His parents joined the chorus, pressing me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. But looking at them, all I could see were vultures circling. Why the rush to sell the hairdresser shops again? I pressed, needing answers from Tom. Jake shrugged, the picture of faux reason. Look, babe, after your dad's gone, juggling both businesses just doesn't make sense. We gotta focus on what brings in more dough. The car oil thing is a gold mine, compared to the salons. His folks perked up at this, chiming in with their 2 cents. Darling, think about it. Selling those little shops could give you a life of luxury. Why waste your time on them? His mom cooed, her voice dripping with greed. The sight of them, practically salivating over my inheritance, made my skin crawl. I want you to leave. Now, I said, my voice firm, my resolve stronger. This is a time to mourn my father, not feast on what he left behind. Jake tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. And another thing, this is my inheritance we're talking about. Mine. You and your parents have no say in this. The air turned icy as they realized I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. With heavy steps and heavier scowls, they left, leaving me to ponder the lonely battle ahead. The dawn after my father's funeral found me in a fog of grief, the world around me dulled to a monotonous gray. That's when Jake decided to inject his version of color back into our lives. Over a breakfast that tasted like cardboard, he launched into his agenda. We need to call a meeting with the founders of your father's company, pronto, Jake stated, his voice slicing through the quiet like a knife. I paused, a piece of toast halfway to my mouth, and stared at him. Jake, my father has just been buried. Can't this wait? I need some time to process everything. He waved off my concerns with a flick of his hand. Time is money, babe. We need to act fast. Frustrated and seeking clarity, I reached out to our family lawyer, asking for a breakdown of the barbershop chain's status and a primer on my father's business dealings. Information, I hoped, would give me some ground to stand on. A month whirled by in a blur of legal jargon and financial statements until Jake, accompanied by his parents, descended upon our house once more, each of them bursting with unsolicited advice and greed-laden suggestions. Without so much as a hello, Jake dove right in. You know, I've been thinking, I'm the right man to lead your dad's company. The audacity of his claim left me speechless, but he wasn't done. And, I'll need a new car. Something that screams business mogul. The latest BMW should do the trick. Before I could even muster a response, Carol chimed in with her own outrageous demands. The coastal house is nearly ready. We just need to throw in another $300,000, plus some for furniture. And, dear, I expect you to set up an account for me. I need to maintain my lifestyle, after all. After listening to their endless demands, I knew what I had to do. It was like a switch flipped inside me. No more Mrs. Nice Gal. Clutching the divorce papers like a shield, I stepped forward, interrupting their chatter. Jake, we need to talk, I announced, placing the papers before him on the coffee table. He picked them up, a frown creasing his forehead. What's this, then? His attempt at nonchalance couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. Divorce papers, I stated, every word deliberate, icy. I've had the business audited. Jake, you've run it into the ground. It's teetering on the edge of ruin because of your management. His face drained of color, a guilty child caught in a lie. I was trying to make it better, he stammered, his excuses as flimsy as his confidence. Make it better? By firing our most talented staff and neglecting the core of what made the business succeed. My voice rose, fueled by a cocktail of anger and betrayal. Carol, ever the meddler, couldn't resist intervening. Now, dear, let's remember he's entitled to half of everything. Marriage binds assets, after all. I couldn't help but laugh, but there was no joy in it. Nice try. But everything's been in my name since before I made the colossal mistake of marrying your son. He gets nothing from me. The room went silent. They were stunned, their grand schemes shattering around them. And another thing, I added, staring Jake down. You're going to pay back every penny you've cost the business. Every single penny. When the reality of the divorce finally hit Jake, his reaction was to desperately grovel, pleading with me to reconsider. Please, can't we talk about this? There has to be another way, he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. His parents, not to be outdone in the drama department, launched into their own tearful performance. They lamented about sinking all their funds into the coastal house, a property now hanging by a thread without the next installment. We're going to lose everything, his mother sobbed, her tears flowing freely. Please, think of what this means for us. I listened, my heart hardened by their previous actions, feeling nothing but a detached coldness towards their plight. Sorry, but that's your mess, I stated, my tone unwavering. With a newfound resolve, I guided them to the door, closing it, and this chapter of my life, behind them. In the days that followed, I didn't allow myself to dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on the future, selling the apartment that Jake and I once shared. The sale provided just enough for a quaint, welcoming house that promised a new beginning for my daughter and me. Stepping into our new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of peace enveloping us in a way that had been missing for too long. The wheels of justice turned slowly but surely, and when they finally caught up with Jake, he was ordered to compensate for the turmoil he'd inflicted on the hairdresser chain. The courts determined that his recklessness had a price, and he was forced to liquidate his share of our old apartment to meet his financial obligations. Watching him being held accountable for once felt like a bittersweet vindication for the hardship he'd put us through. Out of nowhere, my phone rang one day, and on the other end was my former mother-in-law, her voice laced with desperation. We're in a bind. We need help to buy a place, any amount would help, she pleaded, her audacity leaving me incredulous. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts, before responding. You made your bed, I replied, my tone steady and resolute. It's time you lie in it. Ending the call, a mix of emotions washed over me, anger at their continued sense of entitlement, but also a profound sense of freedom from their clutches. After everything that went down with the divorce and wrestling back control over my mom's hairdresser chain, life finally started to brighten up again. It was a tough climb, but gradually, the salons began to find their old spark. Bringing back those top stylists we'd lost felt like a victory parade. Watching them walk back through those doors, ready to bring their magic back to our chairs, it was like watching the place come alive again. Turns out, I was more cut out for the business world than I'd ever imagined. Each day was a new lesson, a new surprise about what I could achieve. If it hadn't been for being cornered by life's cruel twists, I might never have uncovered this side of me. Handling my dad's car oil business was another mountain to climb. For now, I decided to bring in a manager to steer the ship while I got my bearings. It's all yours for now, but keep me in the loop, I told him, making it clear I was still in charge. Once Lily's old enough, maybe around 20, I'm thinking of passing it to her if she's interested. I want her to have options, to choose her path. Meanwhile, I'm dipping my toes into it, learning the ropes. Our new home, just me and Lily, was a haven of peace, a world away from the turmoil we'd left behind. It was small, sure, but it was ours, a place where we could grow, heal, and build something new. Every corner filled with laughter, every nook cradling a memory we were making together. Out in the garden, Lily's laughter was a balm to my soul. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," she'd say, her eyes alight with wonder and admiration. "You're going to be even more amazing," I'd respond, pulling her into a hug. I knew, deep down, that we were on the brink of something wonderful. Together, we were unstoppable, ready to meet whatever the future held with open arms and hopeful hearts.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.